Once you have a decent image of your work, you'll need to adjust it so that only the painting image is showing, and it's as close to what it looks like in person as possible. It won't be perfect, but get as close as you can within reason. Just like the last lecture, to guide you through the process, I'll have to be somewhat general since there are so many photo editing programs out there. But many icons and methods are similar, so you should be able to translate the information. A rule of thumb to remember is this: do as little as possible to get the best results. Try not to over-edit the image if possible. Now let's take a look at editing photos, and we'll take it in steps. First, load your image or images into your photo editing software. There are many options available online, and some that are free. Next, select the best image from among the ones you've taken. The image should be straight, sharp, and have even lighting. If it doesn't, you should go back and try again. You need an image that meets this criteria from the start. Third, save your best image in the original file size and format, which should be the largest your camera can take. It should be saved as either a TIFF, PNG, HEIC, PSD, or RAW file. These formats preserve the image quality. I normally save it as something like painting title _date_original. And don't leave spaces in your file names, as some programs have trouble reading spaces. If you want to separate words, use an underscore or a dash. Fourth, now you're going to duplicate that image and save a copy of it as something like artist last name _painting title _large. And I save this as a JPEG, something like that. This is the image you'll be editing. In this way, you'll always have your original untouched file for reference. And it actually does come in handy at times. A word about file naming. It's a very individual thing, but a typical method is to use the painting title, as I've shown you, followed by the size, morning light _small. If submitting the image somewhere, typically you'll list your last name first. For example, Poyerd _morning light _small. If submitting to an exhibit, check the prospectus for naming specifications. Sometimes they prefer that all submissions use the same naming format. From here, there are a number of ways you can proceed. You can crop the image and then edit, or you can edit with the background information still visible. It's really up to you. I'm going to proceed as if we're holding off on the cropping. Sometimes I feel that the background information helps with the value adjustments. By the way, you should try to have your painting nearby for reference, but be aware that your room lighting can drastically affect what you see. So place it near a window if you can, or periodically take it into natural light for reference. And now we can proceed to the next step, editing your digital photograph. Generally speaking, when looking at an image you want to edit for accuracy, you first want to see if there's any kind of overall color cast. Does it look too warm or too cool compared to the original piece? If so, you should adjust that first. And that can be done through one of various color tools or a photo filter. I'm going to use the photo filter. And you should add a slight tone of whatever is opposite of the color cast on the color wheel. So an orange tone would need a blue filter added, for example. Start low and then slowly drag up the filter until the cast looks neutralized. That's what adding a complementary color does. It neutralizes the selected color. Another option is to adjust the white balance. The website Cambridge in Color has a great definition for this. They define it as, quote, the process of removing unrealistic color casts so that objects which appear white in person are rendered white in your photos. So the whites in your picture should not lean either warm or cool. They should be neutral. Sometimes programs will allow you to change the white balance of an image, and adjusting that can sometimes make the rest of the editing process much easier. But if your software program doesn't have that capability, there are many other tools out there. Just check the program that you use. Also, I like to check my image along the way in my Finder window, and sometimes I'll use a digital color meter to check the whites. Next is values. Now you want to adjust your light, medium, and dark values. And the icon may look something like this, or this. You may see a tool called curves or levels. You often see some kind of graph. Now, I usually begin by correcting the whites in my image. That's what's almost always off. So if you see tools that look like either of these in your program, be aware that this slider affects the whites or lights, this one affects the medium values, and this one affects the darks. Once I adjust the lights to closely resemble the painting, I can gently adjust the medium and dark values until I'm satisfied. Make sure you save your work, by the way. Now, this was all done on Photoshop, but you can do the same thing on simpler programs. For example, these are the tools on Apple Preview. Do you see how they're similar? Now that you've removed any color cast and adjusted the values, take a look at your various colors and see if they need tweaking. Hopefully they won't, but if they do, look for your color adjustment tools. Compare your real painting to your photo image and see which colors or values need minor adjustments. Number 7. If you find a piece of dirt or dust on your image that's a little too obvious, you can often use what's called a retouch or clone tool to cut and paste tiny areas of the painting in order to cover up the spot. If you have this tool, you may want to watch your program's tool demonstration. Now, when you took your photograph, if you chose to use a gray, white, or Kodak card, you should definitely edit the image prior to cropping, as you'll want to reference the colors and values in the cards. Once the image is as you want it, it's time to crop out the extraneous background. Cropping icons usually look like this and are fairly simple to use. Just click on the tool, apply it over the image. Sometimes you just click and drag, being careful to line up the edges with the edges of the painting. But here I notice that the image is slightly rotated to the right. Before I can crop, I need to rotate it slightly to the left, or counterclockwise. Most programs have this capability. And then I can resume cutting off the background. So I'll line up each edge with the painting image, like this. And before I click crop, I like to zoom in and make sure I have everything lined up accurately. Err on pulling the crop inward if you need to. Once you have it lined up just right, just execute the crop. If you like to do your photo editing on a smartphone, you might want to look into apps such as PhotoLeap, Afterlight, and Lightroom, for example. Many of the tools look the same. Now, once your image closely matches the actual painting and you've cropped it, make sure you click Save. The file should be saved as an RGB or sRGB color profile, if your program gives you that option. These are the preferred color formats when you display your work on the internet. Most programs automatically save in this format, but you might want to check. At this point, you should have a nice large image of your painting. It's time to save smaller files for other uses. JPEG is a universally accepted file format. I find that it's accepted on pretty much every website. Most shows ask for images between 3 and 5 megabytes, or with a minimum of 1920 pixels on the longest side. Websites and social media use much smaller images normally. So what I do is save a very large file for my records and printing, a medium file for shows and such, a small file for websites, and a very small file for thumbnails. Now, a true thumbnail is about 150 pixels, so you could save one that size as well. And lastly, there's a color format called CMYK. Remember that I had mentioned that you want to have it saved in RGB. Well, CYMK is something you need to be concerned about if you want to print your work, whether for a promotional item, greeting card, or a Z-Clay print. CMYK is the color format used for printing. I would recommend that you simply save a copy of your main largest image file and then convert that duplicate to CYMK. And you can even put that in your file name. This is really just if you're going to do some kind of printing. It'll help ensure that your resulting printout is as close to your digital version as possible. In the next lecture, we'll begin our discussion on framing.